Hot Take Hockey Podcast with your hosts, Lucas and John Viveiros.
Hey everyone, we're back for the Hot Take Hockey Podcast, episode 14. Myself, John, Lucas here. Man, loving the hat, Lucas. Loving the stash, looking good. How are you feeling, man? I know we were just talking fantasy off air here, but we can chat about it here as well. But just how you doing?
Feeling good, man. I mean, it's, hockey season's in full swing. Fantasy's going well for me. I know it's starting to bounce back for you a little bit now, which is good to hear. Pretty crazy that we're recording like before usual game time, but there's a game actually going on right now with Isles and Sens. But things are good. Family's good. We're rocking and rolling. How about you, John?
Yeah, it's good. Man, the shift in Ontario here, it's like we were just like a week or two ago, like pretty warm weather. And now it's just like, it was I feel like there's so many other places that go through like a nice, like lengthy transition. And we just go like 180 in a week. So it's getting chilly out there. Warm. Oh, yeah. Get warm out there. But
get those winter tires on, everybody.
Yeah, get the winter tires on. So yeah, just we got a lot of stuff. I mean, talk about a weird time of the year. I feel like the overreactions are still kind of relevant right now, but like we're seeing teams like the Coyotes and Kraken do well. So like we got to talk about that stuff. I got the Devils representing the back. I know you're a big Hughes guy. 9 wins in a row. That's nuts. I even think like there's been a couple wins in there where they squeak it out, like the game against the Oilers. And there's been a couple games like that. So got to talk about the Devs. Got to talk about the Islanders too. They've been buzzing. And I think the takes about Sorokin were not poor at all. I think we were on that. So just overall, man, a couple of these surprise teams, like I'm repping the Yotes right now. Like they've actually been good. Like they've got a couple of candidates for like maybe some awards potentially. So we'll talk about that as well. But just what are you thinking on some of these surprise teams?
Yeah, the Devils have, they've really turned it on here, 9 in a row as we're recording right now. I mean, listen, I thought the Devils were in for their best year yet with the Nico Hischier, Jack Hughes core. And Jesper Bratt, we can't leave that guy out of there. He's been money. Yeah. But I mean, I didn't see them going on a 9-game
contract
here,
baby.
Yeah, and Jesper Bratt, the talks are starting to happen and surface about like 10 million for this guy. I mean, but and it seems like a lot because the Devils are known as more of a smaller team but Jesper Bratt, based on his statistical numbers, he's right there with some of the best point producers in the league right now. So. The Devils, they have surprised me, but I mean, they just got to keep their foot on the gas and bank some points. And if they can keep doing that, they're going to be right in the thick of it down the stretch for sure. At 12-3 right now. What about you, John? What's really popping for the Devils for you?
Yeah, I was also going to say, to answer your question, but also just to add to the point of saying the Devils are probably laughing right now because they were willing to like give up some assets to get JT Miller and then pay JT Miller that money that they were paying for Bratt. And I think that's wild now because you see Bratt's like showing so well. Bratt, like in general, is showing things he didn't even see, like we didn't even see last year. And then JT Miller's kind of stinking it up. Obviously, we're going to talk about the Canucks in this episode. But yeah, it's just one of those things like with the Devils, I feel like a lot of guys are stepping up in big ways. And I think we talked about their underrated defense core. And oh my, bro, so underrated. Siegenthaler and Hamilton as a pair, so stud worthy. And
Ryan Graves,
Marino, like I said underrated. Like now, if you're watching, you realize that it's not even an underrated thing anymore. It's just like they're good. Like they have a great defense core, and I think when you talk about a guy like Severson, who's notable enough, like a contract year, he's on the bottom pair. Like I believe at most times. So it's like the Devils are buzzing. I do think that they're probably going to cool off at some point, but I think with how they've shown, if the goaltending can stand, like obviously. It's been different times, like Vanecek's shown well at times, and then Blackwood had a couple of good games there. So it's just the goaltending, man, to me. I think the roster overall will stick around in that playoff conversation, but if the goaltending can stand, they'll be in the playoffs.
And this is all without Palat too, who's like, he's a notable piece that they've added in the offseason. And goaltending is a big highlight there because Jonathan Bernier is obviously coming back. And I think a lot of hockey fans sort of forgot that the Devils had Jonathan Bernier with the 2 goaltenders they're bringing into the season. So if he can step up while his Blackwood's out right now. So if he can come in, get some starts, just try to return to at least backup capable, I think they're looking a lot stronger than teams had, or a lot of people thought, excuse me.
Yeah, I didn't know. because I saw the report that he was practicing
Mhm.
last month, but so his return's actually soon, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah, so he's in practice now, and I think they're trying to give him a little more time.
Yeah.
Obviously they're on this heater, so they can do that.
Mhm.
But yeah, he's practicing with the team, and I mean, maybe by the time you guys listen, or maybe by the next pod, he's already played a game. We'll see.
And I think that's a big storyline too, because I think if they're smart with this, they'll probably look at a scenario where if they did want to make an improvement up front, like get a stud, maybe like halfway through the year going into the deadline, like they could utilize one of those goalies to get a big time asset. Because there's so many teams that when a goalie goes down, like obviously the Leafs, they went through that panic there where Murray's coming back, so it's kind of fine now, but like there's going to be teams that go through that panic period where a goalie goes down and they need a goalie, and the Devils are going to be laughing because they have 3. So
yeah,
look out for the Devils in terms of a goalie trade. But yeah, I mean, man, I think overall, I think the biggest conversation going into the season was, yeah, I think all of us didn't have, even people we brought onto the podcast, like we didn't have the Devils in the playoff picture, but we said, you know what, if goaltending's there, if goaltending can be above average, like they're a wild card team at least. And that's what we're seeing. I think we're obviously seeing them overperform to what I expected, even with goaltending playing well. But I would say right now, personally for me, I'm more confident with the Islanders because Sorokin is Sorokin. So we have to talk about the Islanders. So if Sorokin, like if he keeps playing like this, like the Islanders are definitely a candidate to be in a division spot. But yeah, the Devils for me, I really want to see which goaltender throughout the whole season takes the reins. I feel like they'll probably go back and forth, but the Islanders, we know we're getting that from Sorokin, and they have Varlamov to back him up. So what do you think of the Islanders, man? Because I mean, Brock Nelson's got over a point per game. Anders Lee's looking back into form. Like they're unreal right now.
So it kind of fell into my lap where I got 4 of these guys in fantasy. And I didn't really need to, but they were just on the table at the time when I was picking. So I got Nelson, Barzal, Romanov, and Pulak. And Barzal is a fascinating one too, because he's starting to get going offensively, but he hasn't even scored a goal yet, John. This guy's got 16 assists in 16 games, no goals.
He's always had that problem.
Yeah, but like the fact that he's gotten a goose egg is crazy, 16 games in. But they're finding a way to chug along here. I mean, all the games when I'm keeping an eye on them seem to be Islander style hockey, low scoring. They're in tight games, usually in the third period, and let's see what happens. But I mean, when you got one of the best goalies in the league, a lot of our guests that came on said Sorokin is one of the best. He's, people thought that Shesterkin might have had a lot of wiggle room between the two, but realistically, they're pretty tight for top Russian goalies in the league, along with Vasilevsky. But Sorokin is showing, just how great of a goaltender he is early on here.
Yeah. And I think these two teams are showing like they're legit conversations in that Metro. And then you flip it on the other side. It's like the Capitals and Penguins are struggling. So I think I love it because there's some parity, but I also want the Pens in there because I'll look like a dummy with some of my takes. So let's see the Pens get back into the spot. I think for you and I think based on what we were talking about, correct me if I'm wrong, I feel like the Caps missing the playoffs won't be an absolute shock to us just based on the injuries and just based on their roster. And I never was confident going into the season with Kemper, to be honest. Like I like Kemper, but I just think he was in an amazing situation with Colorado. And I think he has the capability to have big games, but in a full season with Washington, especially that defense, it always makes me nervous. I was never too excited about him going into the season.
Yeah, neither was I. And that's why I think I had them actually missing, like just missing. I remember on our episode with Isles Girl, it was a bit shocking that I had them missing, but it's because I like teams like the Islanders. I'm more confident in a team like that as opposed to the Capitals blue line. Like you said, a lot of these defenders, they're a little more, what are you going to say, risky with like guys like Orlov and even John Carlson when he's healthy, Nick Jensen. Like these are good blue liners, but a little more offensively minded. And I think that with Kemper, like you said, I mean, even when you look at a guy like compare Kemper to Grubauer, when you leave Colorado, it's tough sledding after that. You're not really going to get much better of a situation than in front of the Avalanche. So Kemper's a good goalie, don't get me wrong, but I think that in Washington, it's a lot tougher for him. So
no, and it fully shows once you get like kind of instilled in that like organization, like Georgiev's been playing well. And even like, I haven't been following Francouz's games, but like obviously last year we saw him in the playoffs. So yeah, let's talk quickly about, before we go into like recent storylines, the Kraken and Coyotes are like the Coyotes. I can't see them making it, but like the Kraken, in a weak Pacific division, that's like such wild cards right now with the Flames struggling in different ways, the Oilers goaltending, even though Stuart Skinner's looked good recently. And then the Canucks are just such a shit show right now. Could you see the Kraken? Like, is there any potential? They have crazy forward depth. Like, is there any chance they could make it?
Oh man, I don't want to get too down on it right now, but I think they're going to make it interesting. Like I really
They're
do.
second in the Pacific right now as we record.
Yeah. I mean, I have them being, you know, a difference maker and around the bubble, but I don't have them in. But I think you hit it on the head with a lot of the times when you draft an expansion team, it's like with the way the rules are set up, you might not get elite forwards. You're probably not going to get elite forwards, but you're going to get depth. You're going to get guys on the third line that might play on the second line of other teams. You're going to get guys on the fourth line that are third liners, right? And that's really what you see with Seattle. Like 1 through 12, they got solid forwards, and all through the lineup they can score. And like if you just go through their roster, they just got so many options. Jaden Schwartz has been great to start the year, right? Like he's returning to form when he was prime on the Blues. Burakovsky, I think a lot of people had as a breakout this year with the more ice time. For sure. But I think, overall they're looking good. I mean, Marty Jones, we can't forget Marty Jones.
Yeah, Martin Jones is having a year right now. Grubauer's injured right now, and he's been playing well. And then, even to say like guys like Geeky and Donato who are on the fourth line have been playing well. So it's like, all across the roster. I don't like how they're handling the Shane Wright situation and Susie, that punch on the back of the head on Dubois. What a freaking knuckleball move. But anyways, outside of that, like the Kraken have been a good storyline. I've liked watching them, and we'll see what happens there. But
I want to highlight Vince Dunn too, because I think that a lot of people had him as his breakout year being last year. Blue. Yeah, but they had his breakout year being last year because there was sparks of him when he was on the Blues. He got his opportunity with Seattle last year, but when Giordano was penciled ahead of him, especially on power play 1, it kind of like, blocked his development there. So now that he's getting the free reign on that, he's really blossoming into a really good defenseman for them. So keep an eye on Vince Dunn. Yeah,
for sure. So let's transition to talk before we bring on our guests. Let's next 10, 15 minutes, let's just go over some recent news, and just naturally we got to go over our Leafers. So it comes out today that Muzzin will be reevaluated in late February. Brody's out for a couple weeks. So kind of panic mode again on that defense. It went from like nervous in the defense to panic mode on goaltending to back to now panic mode on defense. You got Jordy Ben in the top pair with Riley, that celebration Saturday night. So not ideal. And then we should talk about it. I really hate the handling on this Nick Robertson situation. Like, freaking, if you're gonna play him 9 minutes a night or scratch him, send him to the Marlies, man. I'm so tired of this, especially watching guys like Kerfoot do nothing. I'm so tired of watching Robertson's situation mishandled. So, what are your thoughts on? I mean, I'll touch on it too. What are your thoughts on the defense situation? Even the off-ice stuff, like Muzzin, man. Like, it's such a sad situation. We also should talk about the Salming night as well, because
absolutely, yeah. So let's start. We'll start with the blue line just because I want to address that quickly. Yeah. And Jake Muzzin, he's been a warrior for years in the league. I mean, even before the Leafs with LA, and it's sad to see what the situation's turning into right now. I mean, you just got to wish for his health first and foremost. And if he doesn't come back, and he needs to take care of himself. Yeah. But that is a big loss for the Leafs. Like, that's huge. On the ice, that's a huge loss. You see it right now without him. And even in the locker room, he's a big friend of a lot of the core guys. And he is a core guy on this team. He's been there for a number of years now. So it sucks to see the way that one's going. The TJ Brody one was surprising and really caught me off guard on Saturday. I didn't even know. I don't know about you, John, but I didn't even know he got hurt.
Yeah, I didn't know either. I thought there was something happening behind the scenes or something, and then all of a sudden now there's a 2-week timeline.
Yeah, and one thing I did know for sure is they're like, oh, Brody scratched, undisclosed. I'm like, well, TJ Brody would never be healthy scratched in Toronto.
No.
He's the best, like one
most
of the
consistent,
best,
most steady,
if not the best. Yeah, steady defenseman on the team. So when I saw that, I was a little concerned. 2-week timeline. I mean, it's not too much time, but without him, it's a big loss. And Jordy Ben's really going to have to step up after just kicking off his Leaf career with a goal. So look, but I love Jordy Ben. Like, I know the numbers don't say, especially the analytics don't say very good things about him, but leadership perspective, great guy. And just like, did you see like how physical he was on Saturday with what the Leafs have? They need something like that. So I'm happy to see that they have a piece like that. So
Yeah.
That'll be interesting to watch.
On the physicality side, sorry, I just wanted to say, because
yeah.
Abe-Kubel got suspended 3 games for that just nasty hit. But like even before that, it's just kind of funny that Abe-Kubel hits no one on Toronto and then goes to Washington and starts hitting people like it's nothing. So it's good to see a guy actually come into Toronto and like be like, I hope he keeps doing it, especially with a guy like Riley. Like, let Riley do his thing. Ben, please hit everything that moves, please, because that's why Leaf fans want Luke Schenn back. Like,
yes,
that's literally why. And again, for me, I think it's being a little, I know you're a big Luke Schenn guy, but it's being a little overblown. It's like Luke Schenn's not going to come in and be the stud top 4 defenseman. There's clear defensive issues in Canuck land right now. And while Luke Schenn's a shiny toy in that mess of the Vancouver Canucks situation right now, he's not the top 4 solve, but he is a nice defensive hitting defenseman. So sure, I love Luke Schenn, but I hope Jordy Bennett at the very least does that consistently while those other guys are out.
Yeah, he can be kind of like, the Leafs version of Luke Schenn right now, I think.
Yeah.
And, getting the goal right away is just crazy because he's known for his defense. So that was awesome. Like, when he jumped into that, when I saw number 18 on my screen, I was like, wait, what? No way. Like, no way Jordy Ben just jumped in and tapped that in. So that was sick. But I did want to quickly go back to your Robertson point. And I hate when any team in the league does this with a young guy. Like, just give him the minutes he needs to develop and to score at a high point pace, in the American League. There's no need to have him here if he's not going to get opportunity. But the thing is, John, sometimes he gets the Tavares Nylander shifts and I'm like, oh, and then all of a sudden it's taken away. Like, I'm just confused what the process is.
Either way, it's going to be a confidence, like, shitter. So if you're going to crap on the guy's confidence, you might as well just send him down because he's definitely not getting confidence when he's at 8-9 minutes a night. I can guarantee, bro, even us, like, we're low level athletes. And I can tell you right now, if any person, a human being, if you're stuck on the sideline, stuck on the bench, it is not a good feeling whatsoever. I can promise you, I don't like the guy feels crappy about it for sure. So if you're going to play him less than 10 minutes a night for a guy that has that potential, send him down or scratch, bro. The fact that he's being scratched, send him down, please, because at the very least, the Leafs can figure out their situation here. And I mean, my opinion is like move Kerfoot or even send a message, scratch one of those guys. And I don't know, man, like I see so many teams, like we just talked about the Kraken, like have these great third lines. And it's like the Leafs sometimes just don't have these identity lines. And also I'm so tired of watching Engvall do a freaking skate by. Like for a guy that size, I'm so tired of watching that guy do a skate by.
How many times does Engvall also, like, it's so funny to me when I watch, how many times does he go around the net with the puck, come all the way at the top of the blue, then just, he tries to pull this like McDavid-esque thing and it just results into nothing. But Engvall's a whole other conversation.
Yeah. But anyways, my point is Robertson's got the freaking passion while he's a smaller player. Like, just let him play, man. If he's not going to play on the Leafs, let him play on the Marlies. Let the guy play.
Yeah. Yeah. And I went on this rant a few episodes ago about Kerfoot, right? It's like, we know exactly what Kerfoot is. Okay, is he struggling a bit right now? Yes, but we know exactly what he is. I know what his ceiling is. I don't need to see him playing with Matthews anymore, or just please, for the love of God, put Kerfoot on the third line where he should be. Give Robertson the opportunity. And one thing I will highlight, because I did bring this up on a previous episode too, I wanted to see Matthews with Nylander. I wanted to see Tavares with Marner. It happened. And it looked freaking scrumptious on Saturday. I loved it. I want to see it more.
Stick to it, please.
Please stick to it. Nylander was buzzing.
Yeah. And I think it's also just like, it's evidence. Like, it's clear out evidence. Obviously, Matthews has times where he's played great with both those guys. And obviously, people have the thing where it's like, oh, Matthews only scores that amount of goals with Marner. Blah, blah, blah. But it's like, Tavares literally came to Toronto and scored 47 goals with Marner on his wing. So, hello. Matthews is going to score regardless. Like,
and Matthews came out and said, like, it's not about chasing these personal accolades right now. Like, if he doesn't hit 60, I mean, he very well might. But if he doesn't, who cares, man? Like, it's about the better, like, for the team. I don't really care about these individual accolades.
Yeah, and don't get me wrong. After the Leafs got booted in the first round a couple times by Boston, I was like, yeah, please. I was advocating for Marner with Matthews. Big time, for sure. Mm-hmm. But when it's not working, when they're clearly struggling at times, switch it back up. Like, Keith wants to switch everything up in this lineup, except for that, which is the most obvious one, if anything. So we're going all over these things. But I do want to just touch on before we get into like some upsetting deep stuff is like the Leafs have the LTIR space with Muzzin. obviously that's such an unfortunate situation. If Muzzin is taking the year off and he's not coming back, that's flexibility you can use, and hopefully Dubas utilizes it and goes for a big fish. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, agreed. On the blue line.
Yeah. Salming, man. Oh, that was so sad. What was I had to watch it back after because I was working, but I tried to keep an eye on it, and I saw the ceremony on Friday. But then obviously the family for the Saturday. So what were you like? That was bad. It was one of those things like it's inspiring, but it's just so sad.
Yeah, the one on Friday was the Hockey Hall of Fame game, and that one I didn't get to catch the whole ceremony. I'll be honest with you, but I did see the clips going online of Daryl Sittler crying, and I did watch it back. And when you see Daryl Sittler on the ice, like comforting him and all that, and the tears coming down, that's really hard to stomach. So that was very emotional. But the one on Saturday specifically that I want to talk about, I mean, I want to give kudos to the Leafs organization because I think that was the most beautiful ceremony the Leafs have ever done for anything. Yeah. So first things first, I want to highlight that because that was amazing to see. But it's such a sad disease, Borje Salming with ALS, and we don't have a cure for it. So hopefully we can find that in the future. But it was certainly inspiring, like you said, to see him get out on the ice and to have a night for him. And you can tell that even through his illness, he's very aware of what's going on, and he's, very appreciative of all that is happening around him, even though he can't verbalize it, which makes it painful, but also beautiful. So yeah, I mean, very emotional. Every time they panned to Daryl Sittler, it was waterworks for me. I'll be honest.
Yeah, it was tough. I think even watching it back, but like, I can't imagine like in that building, but just, it's one of the most devastating diseases. I can't even imagine. Like I just off of hockey, like the human being aspect, I don't know, man. It's tough to watch. I would imagine his family's going through it. So I don't know, a Leaf legend, but just obviously on a human being aspect, knowing other people that have gone through something like that is, that's like, I absolutely hate that that's a thing. It's so upsetting. It is so upsetting. So hate on the Leafs all you want. That was one thing that they absolutely nailed. And I think rival fan bases even agreed on it. Like even small stuff like doing the all Swede starting lineup and just honoring them in different ways. And so that was a lot for sure. I think even non-hockey people were tuning in on that and seeing what was it. But you know what? Prayers, thoughts with Salming and his family. I think it's going to be a tough road ahead for sure. So we're tough transition out of that. We do want to give our respects though. And honestly, I think in terms of all of hockey, I think that's something that I've always loved about this game, but also there's a lot of stuff that's wrong with this sport and other aspects, but that's what I do love about the game and sports in general, when we can have positive or at least try to turn negative situations into something that's bigger. But so we'll get back into the NHL. We'll have a guest here, but any, I guess, last thoughts on the Leafs in general?
I mean, hockey wise, hard transition, but Matt Murray comes back in their next game coming up here after we record. So looking forward to seeing him return, especially it being in Pittsburgh where he,
we'll see what happens there,
fostered his career, which is going to be pretty cool. So, but we're going to talk about the Penguins as well with our next guest. So
so we're going to bring on my guy, Mitch Milani from the Bottom Line View. We'll bring him on here in a second. Big time NFL football content creator. I have known him for time now through sport media program in Toronto. And he actually did stuff on this channel to start with me. And we kind of like incorporated his old channel to like, that's why it's kind of funny. Like my business email right now, it says BLV NHL. Cause like, that was like the fresh, like when I was trying to come up with a unique name, that was the name of the channel at the very start for the first few months. So it's kind of funny. A lot of people don't know that, but that was kind of before the channel name. But so we're going to talk with him, good buddies with him, and I always keep in touch with Mitch. So he's a Penguins fan. he keeps in touch with the Canucks because he's got a lot of friends that are Canucks fans and he's from Vancouver. So let's bring on Mitch from the Bottom Line View. Hey guys, we're back with the legend, Mitch Milani. I just gave him a huge intro and I was saying off air. This is the guy that got me into YouTube. So Mitch, man, welcome to the pod. I know we've done some pods together before, so it's good to have you kind of as a guest host here to close up the pod. How are you doing? I know it's full out NFL season right now, so we appreciate you coming on. And maybe we'll talk some football on here. But Mitch, how you doing, bro?
I'm doing great, John. Thanks for having me. I've been wanting to come on the #1 hockey podcast on the internet for a while, but you've been keeping me away. So I'm ready to go. I'm ready to rip some hot takes.
Yeah, we had to get you on. I don't know if Jeff might not be too happy, but we'll get him on at some point. But yeah, Mitch, man, honestly, your two teams, well, I know you're primarily Pens, but your two teams, man, in their storylines and not for good reasons lately. Have you been following a lot of hockey this year and mixing in with the NFL? And just what are your thoughts on what you're seeing?
Yeah, I've been following a good amount of hockey, obviously. I'm in a couple fantasy leagues, so I definitely got to keep up to date with that. But Pens, hear a bunch about the Canucks, try to watch the Canucks as much as I can as well here in Vancouver. So, but yeah, those two teams primarily, and then, of course, keeping up with the rest of the league.
Awesome. Yeah. I wanted to quickly touch on those Hockey Hall of Famers. We're right out of Hockey Hall of Fame weekend here.
Yeah.
The 4 guys that got inducted all did not win a Stanley Cup, shockingly enough. And I would have loved to see some of these guys win. But what are your thoughts on Alfredsson and then more close to home for you, the Sedins and Roberto Luongo getting into the Hall?
Yeah, Alfredsson was always a great player. Obviously grew up with him in Ottawa, and he was a sweet, skilled player. I think very underrated to that one. I remember the Swedish team that won the gold medal in 2006. So he was a big part of that. In terms of the Canucks guys, I think Roberto Luongo and the Sedins were those players where you guys know this as being Leafs fans. Canadian fans are very critical. And those 3 guys were very, very heavily criticized. As loved as they were, and I feel like they're more loved now. When you take a step back and you look at the success,
for sure.
Yes, of that era of Canucks hockey, which was phenomenal. They won the President's Trophy a couple years in a row. They went to the Cup. They were a dominant team, and you didn't really. I feel like people kind of took that for granted here in Vancouver because people were always criticizing Luongo in big games. People were criticizing the Sedins for being soft. But when you look at those guys, I think Luongo is an all-time goalie. He's just, I feel he was such a calm presence in the net and so technically sound. I feel like big guy and always came up even in Canada when Brodeur kind of started off in 2010, a little rough. He came in and he was great. But for the Canucks, he was a huge reason they were so good. And there was games, I remember going to a playoff game, and I want to say it was 2008 or 9, somewhere in there. And they were playing the Stars. And I think he had faced like 65 shots. It was unbelievable. And they won the game 1-0. Oh. It was unbelievable. And that was just Roberto Luongo. They made that crazy trade with Florida. He kind of started that run for them. The Sedins took off as 2 of the best scores I've ever seen for the Canucks. And that combination, that duo just had chemistry like I've never seen. The plays they would make with the puck, the chemistry they had on certain power play plays. It was just unbelievable to watch that skill. So that's what stood out to me for the Sedins was that skill and that chemistry of how they played, because they weren't the most physically talented. They weren't the strongest. They weren't the fastest, but what they could do with their vision, passing the puck and playing with each other was just marvelous.
Yeah. And so many goals where they would just read off each other and just get into the right spots. And they wouldn't even have to look for each other. They would just know, the guy would be right behind him, drop pass, whatever. But yeah, the Sedins were special, man. I mean, I was talking about it with my buddies on the weekend. Like, can you imagine a world where the Sedins don't play together, right? For their whole career. I mean, it's so special. They got to play their entire career together. It's awesome. Kudos, Brian Burke.
Brian Burke, I was about to say, what a move. Yeah, honestly, I think going to what you said, Mitch, like Luongo had some crazy games back then. Like, I think he had like a 70 save one too. Like, he had some crazy games where it was like the saves just piled on. So yeah, growing up, I think we've talked about it, Lucas, like Luongo, Kiprusoff, Brodeur, like some of these notable goalies watching growing up it was like next level. Obviously there's so many great goalies now, but I just feel like back then, obviously the transition of like, there were a lot of weaker goalies back in like, not weaker goalies, but just how the game was like 70s, 80s. So like, even for our dads, like watching some of the goalies like progress in the 90s too. But I was going to ask you, Mitch, just now seeing, do you feel like the taking for granted part about the Canucks? Cause I picked up on that is like now more so seeing what fans are going through with Vancouver is like, you have a good team on paper, but it's like this product of what we're seeing. Is that even more so the taking for granted part?
Yeah, definitely. And not that long ago, like the past week, Kevin Bieksa did a speech in front of the team. He was a big part of that team as well. He's not a Hall of Famer, but he's a Canucks legend. And he kind of spoke to the culture of that team. And you don't really realize that, but they had a lot of really strong leaders in that locker room. And the Sedins led by example, I feel like, more than any other duo, because they weren't loud. They weren't these big leadership, speech before the game type guys, but they were working hard day after day in the gym, didn't miss games. Like they didn't miss games. They were playing 82 games regularly. And I think that's what, even myself, growing up, I didn't really realize, because, I was more built off that when I was younger, like that Naslin, Bertuzzi, Jovanovski era. And I kind of love the way they played because they were kind of like fast, skilled, physical. And the Sedin era was more based on like these pretty passing plays and this like Swedish type of hockey, which I wasn't a huge fan of. But then you look back at that and it was just like, I think I kind of missed it, to be honest with you, because I was also a Pens fan at the same time. So, but the Canucks, man, I wish they could have that again. I wish this city could lift a cup. And looking back at 2011, I wish they were able to win that cup.
That would have been unbelievable, honestly, man.
I was all out for the Canucks. I remember I had a freaking poster. Like I was going all in for the Canucks that year. So yeah, definitely disappointed to see what it's become now. But on the Hockey Hall of Fame topic, Mitch, we know you're a big Pens guy. So like, just not the fact that we're skipping over it, but it's like Crosby locked, Malkin locked. Like it's not even a conversation. So we don't even need to get it. We don't need to talk about it. But Letang, I know you've had certain opinions about Letang in recent years, but when we look at Letang, we were talking about it off air, back-to-back World Juniors. He's won 3 cups. I think in terms of point totals, like, and in terms of last decade, he's obviously up there in terms of defensemen. Your take on Hot Take Hockey, is Chris Letang a Hockey Hall of Famer when his career's done?
John, it's absolutely he's a Hockey Hall of Famer. Okay. Not even a question. Bro. Yes. Come on. Like, here's the thing about Chris Letang. People don't actually realize how good Chris Letang has been for so long in all facets of the game. Like, he's been criticized with some defense and laziness on the back end. I've never been one to really criticize him. He plays so many minutes for this team for so many years. Power play, penalty kill. He's an incredible puck handler, great skater. He's my type of defenseman, right? He's got the offensive skill, but he's also got the grittiness, the toughness. He can lay a big hit, right? And he's clutch. How many times have we seen on cup runs, plays the whole game? Like, oh, Chris Letang's out there for 2 minutes straight, and he's trying to play against the number one best line. And then he's also trying to feed that offense to Crosby. And I feel like you're not representing the Crosby era of the Penguins, the Malkin era of the Penguins, if you're not representing Chris Letang, because after all, the way that the Penguins look at it, it's been a trio. It hasn't been a duo for all those years. It's been a trio. And Letang's been that guy, especially playing with Crosby, who started that offense from the back end. So I think Chris Letang's a phenomenal player. And I don't even care what the numbers say and all that. I know the numbers have been good in certain years, but just watching the guy play, he's been a phenomenal defenseman for a lot of years.
Yeah, I was going to say, I actually think Lucas, it's funny because you know who this guy is, but I actually crossed it up because I'm always getting texts like over the last couple of years more so about complaining about Chris Letang. And for some reason, when we were about to bring you on, I thought it was you, but it's actually my buddy Ty. So Lucas knows who that is, who's a big Pens fan. And I swear he's always texting me. So shout out to Ty. He's always texting me. He's like, freaking Chris Letang in his own zone. Chris Letang giveaway. Chris Letang lazy around the net. So it's like, I thought that was you, but I feel like you've given credit. I think a couple times you said something about his defense, but more so, I guess you are.
I've always been a very Chris Letang, pro guy. Like even the years where he didn't make Team Canada, I was like, he should be on Team Canada. Like I was that guy. Like I know there's people that have been critical of him, but there's been years where the guy has, right now we can get into Dumoulin, but I mean, carrying guys, Rob Scuderi. Oh my goodness. Like he's had some partners too, where they have not held up their own end, because Letang's one of those guys that at his best, he is that kind of free, loose, like offensive defenseman, right? He does need that support of a defensive defenseman. And sometimes he gets kind of left out to dry, so to speak, because his partner is not doing what he should be doing.
Well, there's a reason why we've now seen Marcus Pettersson boosted to the top pair. Dumoulin getting that demotion to the bottom pair. What a disaster. That guy was so steady and just down the hill. Steep hill.
Yeah.
Disaster.
Yeah. I feel like Dumoulin is kind of one of those archetypes of a player where he can be really good in his like mid-20s to later 20s. And then once they just hit a certain amount of minutes, it just becomes the body, the wear and tear on the body, especially a guy that's been deep in the playoffs consistently. It's just tough, I feel like.
This steep hill that it reminds me of is the Carl Ulsner steep hill. He was so steady with Washington, and then Montreal picked him up and
fell off.
The Dumoulin effect or the Ulsner effect or whatever you want to call it. But so that's what I want to go over, because I forget who it was. I think I have it. Oh, Dave Molinari. He brought it up online, and he said he was talking about Dumoulin and how the Penguins have been trying to consider even attaching it. Like, I can't believe it's gotten to this point, attaching an asset. And he's talked about the Penguins internally have considered putting Kasperi Kapanen on waivers. Like, that's how bad it is for some of these guys, man. Like, this is like a Penguins writer talking about these things. So yes, they're about 500 right now, but Mitch, how bad has it gotten? Like, obviously outside of the core guys like Sid, Malkin, Gensel, the main guys are playing well, but it's like past that, how bad has it been?
I mean, it's been bad, but like, I guess I'm not one of those people to like feed into the negative. I've seen this team play like trash for stretches in years, and they had certainly a terrible stretch, but I'm not giving up hope that this team's going to make the playoffs. Like, I'm not going to do that. Now, are there guys that are frustrating to watch? Has their defense certainly been a liability at times? For sure. The funny thing is, I feel like going into the year, I was higher on the defense. Like, I did like the addition of Jeff Petrie, and I did like some of the younger guys getting some more minutes. I think part of the problem right now is Sullivan is not willing to maybe be a little bit more flexible and try some things with the lineup that he was doing, like when he actually came into Pittsburgh, and he just started like, all these guys from the AHL are getting boosted up, all these young players like coming out of nowhere. Now I feel like there are some of those older guys like Dumoulin and guys that are just not performing, like Kapanen. Although Kapanen is, I got to talk to you about this, John, because you saw him in Toronto. He's one of the most frustrating players because he has all the skill and all the talent. He's fast. Like he can make plays. Like you'd want him to be on your team, but then he's just like kind of like, he leads to like irrelevancy. I don't know what I think it
comes down to. I honestly think that, what you said, the skill set, but I honestly think sometimes that guy's on the ice thinking about something else. Like I think his mind is elsewhere, because Buddy had a wide open net like a week ago, like the most wide open net possible, and he misses out the far side. And I'm like, that right there is just like, that's Kapanen in a nutshell this year. Like his mind is elsewhere. I'm convinced.
Yeah. And he was one of those guys too, John. Like when he played for the Leafs, it was like, I want this guy to be here forever. Keep him here for 10 years because I want to see what this guy turns into. And then when the Leafs ended up moving him, it was like, I didn't have that same feeling. Like when he got traded, I was like, oh, just another piece, right? Because what you said, Mitch, I feel like he's got all the tools in the toolbox, but then the end product just isn't there. Like there's something missing. And maybe it is just that focus that you're talking about, John. But like, I don't know what it is.
Yeah, it's an it factor that's negative. I don't know what it is.
It's the Sunday skate effect, as I say. Him and William Nylander spent too much time together. But Nylander's having a good year. I won't crap on Nylander. But yeah, so Mitch, overall, before we get into maybe some trade scenarios and stuff like that,
sure.
What has been the more expected? Like, did you? Because I know you're always on the Canucks, like harder than them at times. But is this like, is the Canucks bad start more expected, or the Pittsburgh? Like, where are you at right now? Like, because both, I would say, fan bases, more so the Canucks, obviously. Like, Canucks land is burning right now. But what's the more expected or unexpected, I guess, in your eyes?
The more expected, John, is the Canucks. I told you before the year they're not that good. I keep telling these people, bro, this is the Canucks. They get overhyped every year. Okay, they've got some talent. Like, I think they're intriguing to watch and they're fun because they can score sometimes, but they're just not a full team. And I feel like that was kind of noticeable, though. Like, I feel like before the year, they're still missing so many pieces, especially on the back end. And now their goalie situation isn't as good. And I just feel like there's some inconsistencies in forward. There's just players that are a little bit overrated, in my opinion. Pittsburgh, like, a little bit more unexpected because they actually started the year really well. I think they won like their first four games, and then all of a sudden they just hit a wall and they just hit a slump, which I've kind of chalked it up at the first couple of games to being like, veteran teams letting teams come back, kind of playing lazy at the end of the game. And then it just snowballed. I do feel like Pittsburgh is going to get back on track. I do think the Canucks are capable with their skill to go on a bit of a run, but I just don't think they're a well-rounded all-around team. They're still missing pieces.
And Demko hasn't been that guy. Demko has not been that guy.
Something you said there that I want to highlight too, because both these teams have the same problem right now, is both their starting goalies are not their starting goalies right now, right? And that's crazy to me that I wouldn't have seen either of these backups, taking the reins this far, this early, especially Spencer Martin, who's actually played very well for Vancouver. Who do you think is going to get the return to form as far as these starters go first? Jari or Demko as of right now?
That's tough. I think most people look at Demko as being the better player individually, but I do think you would trust, not necessarily because of the individual, but I trust Sullivan's system and just the Penguins as a collective to come together defensively a bit better and be able to kind of allow that goalie to gain some confidence and play better. Because even when the Penguins won cups, it wasn't necessarily Matt Murray. It wasn't necessarily Fleury was actually better in other places. I feel like it was the structure of how they played. So I feel that it's probably Tristan, but Demko's certainly capable individually of just having amazing efforts. So that's kind of how I view it.
Yeah, I was gonna say the whole point of system and culture and all the stuff we've been talking about. I think, I'm on that point of like, that's why Vancouver, I think there's more of that blow up potential because the culture is just so damaged, I'd say. Whether it's like JT Miller making comments, like Bo Horvat's uncertainty, is he going to stay or is he going to be traded? Like as recently as like this past week, so many different insiders are talking about, like Elliot Friedman just talked about, like we could see the Boudreau coaching change like any minute. It's like more of a matter of like when, and like the Horvat situation's going to be like decided more so recently, because I can't see Vancouver going into another situation where they go past the deadline and don't have something settled. Like whether you're re-signing Bo Horvat or trading him. I do want to talk about this tweet I saw today. So the Bruins network, after they like cited Kevin Weeks talking about Bo Horvat potentially being traded, and how heartbreaking would that be for Canucks fans if to see like a guy like Bo Horvat in a Bruins jersey? Because like there's been rumors of the Bruins trying to go after a center because obviously Bergeron, Krejci, that post era. There's been a lot of conversations about even a team like the Flames trying to go after like another winger, and the Canucks have all these wingers on the market, like Pearson. Like, so it's just like, it's funny to see like some of these teams that like Vancouver fans would hate, like in these conversations.
Yeah.
Mitch, would you possibly see a Bo Horvat like trade? Like, do you think that's more realistic, or do you think like it's all just noise, just like the JT Miller situation, and he'll sign?
It's hard to imagine Bo Horvat not on the Canucks, because Bo Horvat was that guy that kind of led into this generation of Canucks hockey. Not that it's been successful, but Bo Horvat was that fan favorite before he kind of became like a good player. So he was the guy that everybody looked at as, oh, that's our next captain, right? That's our next. And the way that a lot of fans looked at it, including myself, was like, Bo Horvat is ideally the next like Ryan Kessler for this team. I don't think he's ever reached the heights. Right now he's on a tear, but he's been that capable, like physical, leader, gritty, can score, but can take face, all that's all around center.
And he's also
type
the
guy.
only guy that was still like, he was there when the Canucks were kind of transitioning. Like he was
Right.
there with veterans, right?
Yeah. And I don't think Bo Horvat is the problem. Like, I don't know. I'm not in the locker room. I don't know. But there's other guys like
JT
Besser, Patterson, Miller, maybe a little bit. Like, I'm not the biggest fans of these guys. Okay. I don't know. I like Miller, how he plays sometimes, but he's not played that well this year. Maybe the contract's gotten to him a little bit. Horvat is the type of guy you would want to pay, even if you're paying him a little bit too much, just because it feels like he's kind of a glue guy. He's a leader. And I don't think they have a lot of that. And I think Rutherford will probably see that eventually. And I feel like he'll probably be back, but I wouldn't expect him to be traded. I think there's going to be other guys that maybe get traded.
Yeah, I think it's just the scenario that they're in right now, like the Horvat pending UFA, like versus like all these other situations. But I'm with you. Like, I think he's the last guy you should be moving. But it's now even more so a problem because in how much of a mess the Canucks are, like Horvat's playing decently well. So it's like, it's like the starting point is like 8 million. It's not even a question, like for sure over 8, for sure in my eyes, considering like the production in terms of like his value to the team.
For the Canucks though, I feel like we're always, as far as the Bo Horvat conversation goes, John, I feel like every episode we come on here and we talk about how as soon as JT Miller signed, this thing just got derailed. And JT Miller, I wanted to highlight when I was watching the Leafs Canucks game on Saturday, the body language, what you were saying, Mitch, like just this guy, we're not in the locker room. We don't know what's going on behind the scenes, but from what we see as consumers of the game, he passed, it was a pass on the power play right before the end of the first, I believe. And Horvat missed it. And Miller puts his arms in the air. And it was this whole scene. And right when the buzzer went at the end of the first. And all I could think about was like, man, or you know what? It was the end of the second because it was when the Canucks blew the lead. So it was 3-2 Leafs going to the third. And JT Miller just looked like you can't do that as a leader of the team. And as a guy who just signed for 8 years, stuff like that just oozes into the rest of the guys. And it's just not a good look. But Bo Horvat, I think, John, to your point, as far as trades go, they're just going to have to make a decision. So one or the other is going to happen. Like you said, by the deadline, they have to make a decision. They can't walk in.
I think the easy ones are like, they'll probably trade guys like a Tanner Pearson. And I could honestly see, like, if they're not in a playoff conversation, they should get assets out of Luke Schenn. Like, obviously we've talked about the Leafs, but like at that point, like, get assets for the guys you can that are not going to like make or break your team. I feel like Luke Schenn's been a great character guy and honestly one of the positive aspects of the Canucks, but like get assets, get freaking assets.
But who's taking Tanner Pearson?
Like, I don't know, but I'm
saying terrible.
Yeah, like,
but I'm just thinking more so like if the Canucks were to take a contract back, like you could probably get an asset for Pearson for like a third line. Like I could see a team like Tanner Pearson's one of those guys that like he's in the mess of Vancouver. I think he could be a guy that goes on a third line of like a playoff contender and like play well. Yeah. Again, if the contract's coming back, the contract's coming back. Like Mitch, I'm sure right now how frustrated you are. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm wrong in saying this, but he obviously didn't show well, but would you take Pearson for Dumoulin 1-for-1 right now?
Oh my goodness.
Probably take Pearson for Kapanen 1-for-1 right now.
You know what though? Like that's the area you guys were saying. What's the problem with the Pens forward group? You can't really do anything there.
Yeah.
Obviously, like as a dream scenario, I would love to get like a top 6 forward. No doubt, obviously, but I don't think it's the top 6. I think what's missing from Pittsburgh on the forward group is actually the fourth line. The fourth line is
you're missing the Tanev days.
Yeah, that like Bluger's not playing right now. Like they just don't do anything productive. Like they're not bad. Don't get me wrong. They're not like a full negative, but they just don't impact the game the way that you remember the Matt Cullen line.
Yeah.
Like that line always impacted the game in big situations and you could trust them. Fourth line's irrelevant. Third line, Carter's kind of like, he's kind of older. Like ideally you'd want him on the fourth line and then maybe you spice up that fourth line. But I think it's kind of the bottom 6 for the Penguins. For Pearson, I don't know, man. Like, yeah, I kind of get your point. He could be one of those veteran players that you put in there to your bottom 6 and he can score a little bit. He can defend a little bit and he can do a little bit of everything. But like, I don't know, man. Dumoulin, yeah, I'd probably get rid of him. Like, I'm
just here for the drama. I want some drama. Like, I miss the freaking. I know Canucks fans are not going to like this comment, but I miss the Benning days because there would be the drama plus the moves. Like, obviously, betting's a disaster.
Rutherford's gonna do something, John. He's
They need
gonna
to
do
it,
something.
bro. I want it to blow up. I want the drama, man. I want
I don't think he likes the coach very much either.
Tomorrow,
Not at all. Not at all.
I want to see a crazy trade. Like, I want to see it tomorrow. Like, it should have been yesterday.
Yeah.
I thought Rutherford was more of like a tentative, like, you know, keep things close to your chest type of GM. Like, thought that's the reputation he grew up on. But I mean, the last couple of weeks, bomb. Like, he is just making it known he doesn't like Boudreaux. Right?
Like, yeah.
Not a good look.
So that's why everyone's saying it's a matter of one at this point. But also just like, that's why I'm saying if you can try to figure out the Horvat situation for him to stay. And again, go back to the conversation of culture. Horvat, positive for the culture. You know who's negative for the culture? Mr. Special JT Miller, who wants to put his hands on his head every time that someone else makes a mistake, but can give the puck right away to freaking Kirby Dach and stand there like a dummy. So JT Miller, see ya. If the Canucks know what's good for them, they'd attach assets to this guy just to get rid of the contract at this point, because you were going to lose him to free agency for nothing. So at this point, get that contract out of your hands. And that's my hot take.
Would that be the fastest trade for a long-term deal that was like just signed of all time? Like,
I don't know.
I've never seen something like that before. Come on.
Whatever team will take him, do it. Do it. Honestly, I'm not even joking. I don't care how many points he puts up. He's a power play. I had a guest make a rant video because I was like, you know what? I can't speak on this team. I need a Canucks fan to speak on him. Oh, JT Miller's a power play merchant big time. 5-on-5, it's a disaster. And the Canucks need to.
And their power play is terrible.
Oh, they're terrible all around.
They're terrible. You just got Pedersen with the puck in the top of the point, waiting 10 seconds to release the puck. I mean, what are you supposed to do there?
And then the fact that they just got their shiny new toy, Kuzmenko, who's had some good games. He had the Hattie.
Yeah, and
healthy scratch.
That's crazy. I actually thought he was playing really well at the beginning of the year.
I don't even know if
he adds something unique to the team too.
Yeah.
Like, it doesn't make any sense to me.
To me, man, I think I ride with the take of if you can re-sign Horvat, so you keep Horvat plus Hughes and Pedersen probably being untouchable, blow it up.
Boom.
Because at this point, I'm tired of looking like a dummy. I tried to believe in the Canucks. It's not happening.
Don't do it, John, until you see it, man. I'm telling you with the Canucks. You gotta wait.
John, you really tried. You actually did. You were really
you did. I was scared for you.
I'm done.
I will say I don't want them to trade Luke Shen.
I want Luke Shen back in our city over here. Send him back our way.
Yeah, I'll make a deal with Vancouver. I want Luke Shen and Mitch Mulaney back in Toronto right now. There you go.
Let's go. Future
right,
consideration.
Let's do it.
Mulaney, on the way out here on the pod, any hot takes to finish the pod? Something that will just shake up the HTH viewership.
Oh my goodness.
Get people
on the spot, Mitch. On the spot.
Yeah, bro. Anything. It could literally be anything NHL.
I don't know if this is hot, but I really like how the Dallas Stars are playing. I feel like they might win that whole thing, the whole conference.
Wow.
I don't know if that's bold.
Okay,
that's
it's fine.
pretty bold.
That's bold, but we'll even mix it in now because I promised a touch of football talk. What's your hot take right now in the NFL? Because I know you got one sitting right now. Maybe not one hot enough that you're saving for a video, but enough that you could drop in the pod.
A little drop.
That's actually a great question off the top of the head. My
goodness.
Could
be a player, could be a team. My hot take right now.
Yeah.
The Packers are making it back into the playoffs. They're going to come back.
My hot take. How about we go with this? I don't even know if this is accurate, but I've kind of been getting the sense that in the AFC, everybody's hyping up the Chiefs and the Bills, John. You know this, right?
Yeah.
I don't think either of the teams will make it to the Super Bowl. Has that a hot take?
That's a pretty hot take for sure.
That's pretty spicy. That is pretty spicy.
Because I think
let's try that out for size.
No, that's hot take for sure. I think people will be on you a little bit for that. You know what I'll say though? I think like when you look at the Bills, like obviously going into the year, I feel like everyone's like, okay, this is their year. And everyone kind of forgot how good the Chiefs can be, or I should correct myself, how good Patty Mahomes can be. But yeah, man, I like the shakeup. I will say I have a lot of friends that are Bills fans. I'd be down to see it. I think it'd be exciting. I'd probably maybe go for a tailgate, but I want to see my Hawks keep shocking people. I know they lost to Brady, but I want to see the Hawks keep.
I think they make the playoffs. I think they do.
I hope they make it, and I hope the Niners don't.
No,
the
Niners are going to.
The Niners are making the playoffs.
Don't worry.
Don't you worry about that. The Niners are making. They're making the playoffs.
All right, Milani. Thank you.
Another hot take would be, I think the Niners can go to the Super Bowl again. I do.
Nah, I hate that. All right, Milani. Guys, make sure you go subscribe to the Bottom Line View on YouTube. What a legend. And make sure you're checking in on the live streams, the videos. Mitch has got it coming. And I'm sure we'll do some more content coming up. Hey, Mitch?
Absolutely, man. Anytime.
All right. Thanks for coming on, bro.
See you, Mitch.
Thank you, guys. See ya.
Appreciate you, man. Legend.